All right, good morning, BFM family. Hey, I hope your kids missed the bus this morning, and if they didn't, you might want to run them down with an AR so you can get them back before it's too late. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the commies are coming. Let's just rip it right out the gate. So we got a new expose video drop from Project Veritas, and it is chilling. It's terrifying. If you have children in a public school, you should weep for them, and you should fix it. You should get them out as soon as possible. Like, honestly, stop watching this show and go take your children out of the public school system before it's too late. And then come back and watch the replay later. Guys, it's not hard. Parenting is one of the hardest things you can do. I have been to war. Raising a child is harder than that. It requires at least as much vigilance. And in theory, you should be more emotionally and personally invested in it. But let's be real. From the second that little monkey starts to crawl, from the very second that little monkey starts to crawl on its own, is individually, autonomously mobile, it's a greedy little suicide machine. Everything tastes magical. Everything has to go in its mouth. It's going to start trying to stab things that explode and kill it. Like, I don't know, the power outlet. They'll find a lamp with a light bulb that doesn't have a light bulb in it and stick a hand in a socket. Constant vigilance. Yurek Rebmuj, and wow, I am sorry if I just butchered that name, but I'm going to go with Yurek. Let's just guess that these evil beings will be doubling down on the kids this year. Abso-frickin-lutely. I'm at a loss over this video, honestly. Sort of. I mean, I'm a hyper-polyglot. I rarely run out of words. I've a larger vocabulary in my other foreign languages than most Americans have in their first, which is another problem with our public school system. I studied Spanish and Latin in a public school. I did. And I learned Spanish well enough that I could run a job crew. I could train native Spanish speakers who don't speak English to do, to work at a McDonald's, to work on a construction site, to do labor type work. I'm not fluent enough in Spanish to go and teach PhD classes in philosophy. I have to do that in English. But I can. I am that proficient also in Korean and a couple of others, and I can read and write Latin. But I got a lot of my education. I skipped a lot of school when I was in a public school because I had a full-time job, and I got a lot of my education reading books in a Waffle House after hours, after I got off of work, studying, learning things myself. Steve cracks the joke, and he's humble too. I have spoken before about my feelings about humility. I don't have any use for that particular emotion. Humility is not having faith in yourself. If you don't believe that you can do a thing, then you cannot do it. I find humility to be the least useful emotion of all. So, all that to say, I did go to a public school. That was 20 years ago that I graduated the public school system. And I live in Georgia where we have the Hope Grant. When I first learned that I could drop out of high school and get a GED and take the Hope Grant and go to college, there are several reasons, mostly to do with tradition and expectation, that I did not go that route. And I have often thought that one of the worst mistakes I ever made, and I still maintain this, probably the worst mistake I made in my entire life, was graduating high school. because I could have dropped out 3 years before graduation, taken a GED and gone straight to college and saved myself a lot of wasted time and headache. Now, that said, when I was in a public school, at least the teachers when I was in a public school had the common decency to merely be inadequate to the task. I don't humble brag. Like I said, I don't have a lot of use for humility. I'm a genius. I'm brilliant. I learn things faster than most people. I read faster than most people, largely from practice because I read prolifically. My adventures in the public high school were a constant disappointment, as I was always saddled with teachers, with a very, very few exceptions. Mr. Duke, you were amazing, who simply did not have a grasp of the material they were teaching, sufficient to even instruct it adequately, let alone to engage me in a conversation or even answer questions I would ask. One professor of economics asked the class at large what fiat currency was, and I described that fiat currency is a currency which is not backed by a hard metal, is guaranteed only by the credit rating of the entity that guarantees it, and essentially operates as a sort of ephemeral barter system, where rather than trading individual goods or services directly, a particular unit of currency represents a promise that someone else will pay you for the thing that you have surrendered in exchange for that promise to the other person. Essentially, a fiat currency system is a currency that is entirely constructed of debt. A dollar, dollars are not wealth. Dollars are debt that are owed to you by people who could not pay with a hard currency, with goods or services or precious metals, right? Every dollar you own is literally debt. Like, we have a debt crisis in this country because our currency is constructed of debt. And the professor said, that's too much answer. And somebody else raised their hand and just recited the textbook answer. It's currency that's backed by the government. An answer that's so incomplete as to almost be entirely wrong. That's the public school that your children are in, if you have them there. Our public schools are an absolute tragedy. But like I said, when I was suffering through that maelstrom of malefactors, at least the teachers had the common decency to be merely inadequate. They had a left-wing bent, but it was subtle, and it was not as insidious as it has become. And that may be an underestimation, because it was that left-wing bent 20 and 30 years ago that created the people who are adults and are teaching your children now. Now, they are less than inadequate. They have gone from being insufficient to the task at hand to being not good enough, smart enough, well-trained enough, focused enough, well-informed, or competent to teach the subject matter to which they are entrusted. They have gone full swing all the way back around, and now they are a threat. Now, they work constantly to actually cause harm to your children, yourself, and your nation. They're working actively to destroy this country. And they have even gone so far as to say that their objective includes the revocation, the repeal of the U.S. Constitution. Now, this expose from Veritas, we're going to watch We're going to watch the first couple of minutes of it in short clips and take individual statements as they come. It's a 12-minute video. I highly encourage you go watch it yourself. There have been two more videos released from Veritas following up on this one, which are also worth watching. And in one of them, O'Keefe gives you all the pertinent email addresses for the administration at the school in question. And before we get started, I want to point out this is not just one nut job, right? We're hearing the story of one nut job from one nut job, but he goes on to say in this video very clearly that he is not alone, that many of the other teachers in his school are like him, are doing what he is doing. And we could go down the rabbit hole on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and find public school teachers. I'm sure many of you have at least seen an article headline referencing the teacher that told her kids that they should say the Pledge of Allegiance to the gay pride flag. That one's a little more minor, but than this. I mean, it's more minor than this monstrosity, but that's still an abomination. And that's got nothing to do with my position or opinion on homosexuality or the LGBTQ community, any of that crap. I have a lot of completely separate concerns about the alphabet people as a political organization. Because as a political movement, the LGBT crowd, the alphabet people are essentially Marxists who are also engaged in sexual depravity. So let's take a look at this guy.
80 days to turn them into revolutionaries.
How do you do that?
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries. Hear that one more time.
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries.
How do you do that?
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries. I graduated from Heritage High School in Conyers, Georgia, Rockdale County. There's a big sign. I'm sure it's probably still there. And it read, "Our school mission: producing productive minds to serve the community in the future." Not educating children, not producing competent adults. No, the assembly line generation of functional automatons that can be plugged like cogs into various machines. That was the mission statement of the high school that I graduated from. The absolute rot pit where I wasted an unfortunately large amount of my time. I thank gods today that I had a good job back then, for which I had enough interest, and as a devout capitalist, I was compelled enough to earn that paycheck that I skipped a lot of school to go to work. Sometimes I skipped a lot of school because I worked late and just didn't want to go in the morning, but same thing. But this guy has an Ingsoc tattoo on his arm. Anybody tracking on what that means? Ingsoc was the overarching organization under Big Brother in 1984. Ingsoc is the Big Brother. You know, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Those guys. Sorry, I think I got a mustache hair in my mouth. Whoops. I mean, this guy's got an Ingsoc tattoo on his arm, and And it gets worse.
How do you
Scare the fuck out of them. Sacramento.
How do you do that? How do you turn them into revolutionaries in 180 days? I scare the fuck out of them. That's what he says.
Organization that is under the banner of Antifa is very loosely organized, right?
The Sacramento organization that is under the banner of Antifa is very loosely organized, right. This is a known tactic. This is part of the organization of Antifa, that they are very loosely organized in theory. And by a wide margin, the foot soldiers like this guy that are out doing the work, they are very loosely organized. Because Antifa is an asymmetrical guerrilla terrorist organization that is actively engaged in the infiltration and insurrection of your public I'm missing a word. Of your public institutions. That's the word I'm looking for. These are the guys who they're becoming teachers and professors, not because they have a passion for the work. Not because they have a passion for the work of teachers and professors. They're being activated by an organization to infiltrate institutions for the explicit purpose of causing the harm to your children, which this knucklehead goes on to describe in detail.
So like, yeah, when there is like right-wing rallies and stuff, then we'll create an opposition to that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Where would he go to connect to some of these organizations?
No, I post a calendar every week.
Awesome.
And then so like
Okay. Pay close attention to this. What he's about to describe is wrong on so many levels. There's an ethical quandary here that we'll get into in a minute. But I cannot fathom in any way how a person could not calculate this to be active, intentional, malicious child abuse.
These organizations,
I post a calendar every week.
Awesome.
And then so like and I do it for extra credit, so they get points for doing it. And so that encourages them to do it. And I've had like students show up for like protests, community events, tabling, food distribution, all sorts of things. When they go, they take pictures, they write up a reflection. That's their extra credit. Like I have an Antifa flag on my wall, and a student complained about that, and he said it made him feel uncomfortable. Well, this is meant to make fascists feel uncomfortable, so if you feel uncomfortable, I don't really know what to tell you.
So, something that fascists are bad about doing is using threats of force to force you to do things that you don't want to do. Like, for example, wearing a mask in public. Fascism is not correctly understood to be a political position that is oppositive to communism. Fascism is just another flavor of Marxism. Communism assumes the abolition of private property, whereas fascism presupposes the total regulation and overtake and control of the means of production by government, a marriage of private industry and government that erases private industry generally. Fascism and communism are not different. They are not distinct from one another. In each case, what you have is the broad majority of the population are functionally slaves, subjected to equalized distribution of resources. That's food, shelter, clothing, medical supplies, and even your entertainment, right? So, basically, the communist position is either everybody gets a 1,000-inch plasma TV or no one watches television. Right? The fascist position is identical. And in both cases, you have a large central authority controlling that distribution and the assignment of labor. Communism and fascism are not different things. They are different packages being sold to different audiences. Right? For example, if I didn't have this glorious beard, I would probably buy something like a straight razor and some hot bay rum soap and a boar hair brush to handle my daily shave. My wife might want to buy a pink razor to shave her legs. We're both buying razors. The products are not different. They are packaged for different consumers. This guy, I don't know if he's been fired yet. It breaks my heart that he will not be, at a minimum, incarcerated, ideally hanged for treason. But I suspect he's not going to keep his job for a while.
Maybe you shouldn't be aligning with the values that this is antithetical to.
Okay, the values that are antithetical. He's about to talk about this a little bit. And I want you to pay close attention to this. The values that are antithetical to the flag of anti-fascism, as he describes it, are things like rugged individualism, personal liberty, profit motive, drive to earn, drive to achieve. This guy's a monster.
So the Cultural Revolution in the 60s
communist, but I repeat
fixing
myself.
the problem that came about after the economic run. It ultimately failed, right? There was a lot of excesses. People were definitely shot in the streets that probably shouldn't have been.
People were shot in the streets that probably shouldn't have been. He's not saying that people should not have been shot in the streets, guys. No. This radical Marxist who hates your children because they're Americans, in the same way that all Antifa and increasingly it appears all Democrats hate your children for the crime of being American. And I don't care what color you are. If your kid's black and not sufficiently Marxist, they want to do things like, I don't know, get a job and learn to read. They're not black enough for Black Lives Matter or Antifa. They might as well be just another white devil in blackface and shoe polish. They hate your children. So I'm going to back off this video. And I'm going to talk about raising babies for a minute, okay? I encourage you all to go watch this video. And like I said, there's two, just real quick, there's two more out there. They've got one, pro-Antifa high school teacher claims harassment when questioned by a reporter over shocking remarks. And then O'Keefe put out an update following the Unified School District response, because the school district has, in fact, posted a response. Hey, Garth, thanks for your comment, brother. And, hey, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe. Make sure you join us more often. We love to see new faces in the comments area. So I pulled up a little something for some of you will appreciate it. And this is just a little something for my old blood. A U.S. Army Composite Risk Management Worksheet. That's right. See if I can make that a little bigger for you guys in the back. So, mission/task. Raising children. All right. Date, time, group begin, date, time, group end. Basically, we're talking about birth to job. Ish. So, subtasks, raising children, right? You got diapers. That's a subtask of raising children. Hazards, piss in face. Controls, wait until the diaper is full. Residual risk level low. How to implement. I mean, you need wipes and diapers, right? And let's move on. What's another good task? Fast forward a few years. Bike. Learning to ride a bike. Hazards, falling off. Risk level, initial risk level, let's call it medium. Right? Because you know, skint knees, occasionally broken bones. Controls, helmet. Sure, it's 2020. Our kids aren't tough enough to ride bikes without helmets anymore, apparently. I never wore a helmet, really. But helmet, residual risk level, low. But you move forward and subtask, education. Hazards. Brett, I would, but I want to I'm trying to make another point entirely. Education. Hazards. Hostile indoctrination. Initial risk level, extremely high. And I say extremely high. Like we just saw, this guy's not alone. I would be surprised if you could show me, you cannot prove a negative, I know, but I would be surprised, even over proving the negative, if you could find a high school in this country that has not been infiltrated by at least one or two of these lefty lunatics. Now, this guy's in California, okay? In all fairness, as far as the criminally insane anti-American revolutionary insurgents, in all fairness, California is what we call a target-rich environment. Okay? And there are many other states where your target density on these nut jobs is lower. But kind of like your chances of being mauled by cattle, your risk is low but never zero. So, education, hazards, hostile indoctrination. Your initial risk level is extremely high. What are the controls? Homeschool. Read the Constitution. And discuss it. Right? Hey, I'm actually a big fan of the composite risk management worksheet, because this is how in the Army we take a task that's super dangerous. Like, let's put 4 guys on a firing range, and they'll all together run at the target, taking turns shooting at the target with live ammunition over one another's heads. Right? There's no way a reasonable commander's going to let you do that, unless you say, but sir, to make sure nobody gets shot, probably we're gonna do these things first to make sure nobody gets shot in the back of the head by accident. And one of those things is Lowry runs in the back. It's not that I'm worried about your marksmanship, my boys. It's that I'm worried about your vantage point. You're short. Is what I mean to say. So, this is just a thing that ran through my head earlier. What if I did a CRM on raising children, and maybe I need to fill this out with primary tasks and publish it somewhere. That might be funny. Anyway, the hazard of hostile indoctrination from the teachers. Like I said, when I was a kid, they were just inadequate. But now they're dangerous. Now they're the enemy. Yes, I suspect there are good teachers out there. I suspect there are teachers who got into teaching because they think that teaching is a noble profession. And the theory of teaching is a noble profession. But the hazard density of the risk population of bad teachers, and we're not talking about incompetent teachers anymore. We're not talking about teachers who are little more than glorified babysitters and barely that, like we were in the 90s. No. We're talking about teachers who are a hazard because they hate your children, and they hate you, and they hate this country, and they hate all of those things so much that given access to your children, their intent is to weaponize those children against you and against our beloved Constitution, against our prosperity, our liberty, and our faiths. Their objective is to destroy everything that is good and replace it with the murder-death cult of Marxism. They're essentially intellectual eugenicists. And they're marching ever forward to basically deliver this country the first foothold of liberty into the waiting jaws of tyranny and Chinese communism. Y'all be safe out there. And if you still got a kid in the public school, I challenge you to go fix that today. Today. Because they will profit nothing by it. Not even the okay. I was about to say goodbye and hit the button, but let me... Buffy the Vampire Slayer said, "Mom, maybe we should think about homeschooling. It's not just for weirdo religious folks anymore." Right? And that gag was made on a television show in like 1997 or 8. I thought it was funny then. And now more and more I think she was onto something. One of the probably most reasonable sounding arguments that was made with regard to sending your children to public school instead of homeschooling them, right? The only reasonable argument that remains is the argument that, look, I can't afford childcare and I have to go to work during the day. I understand that. That's not a good position to be in, and maybe you need to consider the choices you've made and make some changes to fix that situation. There are many alternatives and options that you can explore in that regard. But the chief argument against homeschool has always been that your children will grow up sheltered, repressed, and they will not have the exposure to other children that allows them to socialize, to become socialized, right? And we really, in this argument, we really are not talking about converting them into socialists. We're talking about them learning how to interact with other people. Look at the children that they have access to if they attend that public school system now. If I have to choose between my children not learning how to interact with people at all, which is not the extreme to which we've gone, and learning how to interact with people from the TikTok generation, sweetheart, sign me up for a nuclear silo bunker in the middle of the desert. Because I do not want my children to interact with that trash. We played with it briefly. My eldest daughter went to a public school for 2 years. At the end of the first year, a little boy shoved her down and whipped out his penis and tried to urinate all over her. She's a young white girl. He's a black boy. There were no disciplinary actions taken at all. At that time, we had already discussed and were toying with the idea of homeschooling. That incident was the end of that conversation. That incident was the end of the very, very little faith that I had in the system. Krista, how is he still alive? That is a somewhat complex question, the answer to which is I have been actively denied specific information and chosen not to pursue it. I'm just going to let that little boy go to jail on his own terms in the future, well removed from interaction with my daughters. Too easy. So, thanks for watching, guys. I love you. Y'all be safe out there, and I will see you tomorrow. Probably. This week's a little touch and go. I will probably see you tomorrow. Y'all be safe. Alex, you should have made that comment before I hit the outro.